I'm going to be talking to you today about the new moon coming up in Cancer on the 25th of June and the second half of June in general. Now, I think we all know the astrology is incredibly potent this year because we are in a period of immense change, turbulence, and transformation. And on the 15th of June, and I mentioned this in the last video, but just as a reminder, I'm filming this actually on the 9th. I'm filming it a few days early for personal reasons, but on the 15th, we have two exact aspects which are quite powerful. That is the third square between Jupiter and Saturn, and the square between Mars and Uranus. So that's quite a peak in the month, and we'll be feeling both of those a few days to either side. Now, I've talked at great length about the Jupiter-Saturn square. I've got a separate video on that. I'll put that below because that also helps you personally. I'm referring in that video to how those planets fall in your chart personally. And I've also talked at length about how it may manifest in general, and in the last update too, which I'll put below. But essentially, this is the final opening square in this Jupiter-Saturn cycle, where we get to reassess where we are at versus the end of 2020 when we had the conjunction. So we could well be reassessing our beliefs now versus where they were then, whether our belief system about the world and how it operates are still valid. We may be reassessing how we feel about the way structures, Saturn, are set up in society, top-down structures. We may be reassessing those. And there will be very much part of our lives that feels like it's expanding, and another part of our life that feels it needs work. But the combination of these can be a really considered, measured, cautious expansion in our life. So it can work really well as a combination. The other aspect, as I say, on the 15th is the square between Mars and Uranus. So when these are both in fixed signs, which they are in Leo and Taurus, 29 degrees each of them. Remember, that's the anaretic degree. This is also falling on the ascendant of the US president, so there could be some developments there. We'll see. This is an aspect of sort of radical, sudden change that can often be quite disruptive, quite radical, sometimes even violent. It's the classic expression for seismic activity of all kinds. So that can be literal earthquakes, volcanoes. As I'm filming on the 9th, we have an incredible intensity of volcanic activity across the world. You're probably aware that Mount Etna is very active. Idaho, we've got a swarm of earthquakes there. We have the earthquake in Guatemala, Fuego, erupting very violently. We have the earthquake in Kilauea in Hawaii, extremely active. And just this morning, we had a 6.4 and a 6.3 earthquake in South America. But these large magnitude earthquakes of 6 plus are coming up pretty regularly now. So as anticipated at the beginning of the year, there is heightened seismic activity at this time for sure. So it can express in that way. It could also be something financial because Uranus is in Taurus, the sign of finance, money. This could be another sudden radical step towards digitization. It could work in that way, and it can work in several ways. So we will just observe and see what happens. But stay peaceful, because this is quite a kind of shocking aspect potentially. So stay calm, stay in peace. The more we can do that as a general principle, the easier life will be. Then on the 18th of June, we have the exact square between Jupiter and Neptune. And this is very different from the square between Jupiter and Saturn. This can be like a big bubble. It can be a big bubble of optimism, and it often affects stock markets in that way. It can be where you're overblowing something, but it can also expand our compassion, our love, our care for other people, that we want to go and help on the soup run or help the homeless or help with the dispossessed in some way. We feel more philanthropic, we feel more charitable. It can also suggest there's some big issue to do with water, the seas, the oceans in some way, big water, big waves. And it can also suggest this whole combination of Jupiter square Saturn, Neptune, a large degree of disillusionment coming into our global psyche, a sense of disillusionment about something, particularly something that was really begun at the end of 2020, which is when we had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the Capricorn solstice. So we will see how this unfolds, but potentially the Jupiter-Neptune aspect can be quite idealistic, it can be quite magical and mystical, and there's a feeling of, I want to move to a more perfect reality. And I think a lot of us feel that, quite frankly. So let us now look at the chart for the new moon. So as always, I set this for England. This is where I live. So on the clock, this is happening at 11:31 British summer time. So as always, when we have a new moon, we have the sun and moon exactly together here at 4:07 of Cancer, very tightly conjunct Jupiter. So see where this falls in your chart, because this is a new seed, a new beginning. Which house area is it in for you? You know, is this falling in your area of family or career or health? Where is it falling? And set a new intention, plant a new seed for whatever you want to manifest in your life, conditioned by the house area where it's falling, and then it will be most powerful for you. So Cancer always brings with it this beautiful sense of emotional sensitivity, caring for other people, wanting to care for other people, and instinctively knowing what other people need to feel nurtured, you know, wanting to care for others. It's very maternal energy in that way. It's often people who work with a lot of children, you know, they really want to care for children. So, and a lot of compassion comes into this too. And that, of course, emphasizes what I've just been saying about the Jupiter-Neptune square. So I think broadly we are feeling a lot of compassion across the world for people in lesser circumstances than us. And there are, you know, the wars, the seismic activity, the extreme weather. You know, a lot of people are struggling and suffering. And that's why one of the reasons I started up that daily or nightly, wherever it hits in your world, 7 p.m. UK time, 15-minute free meditation, to try and see how we can come together across the world and ease the suffering of so many people. So again, I'll put the link for that below. There's no tech, there's no recording. You just literally join energetically, but I'll put the description of that below the Sunday the video about the meditation. But here I think we are certainly dealing with feelings ourselves of vulnerability, perhaps, because that's part of Cancer. We want to sort of hunker down with our family and our loved ones and feel safe and secure. That will feel very important to us. This can actually increase a sense of nationalism, because it isn't just the home base in terms of our family, it's the home base in terms of the country we live in. So sometimes it can increase a sense of nationalism. But most certainly, I think we will have an expanded sense of family here, Jupiter. And that's something I talk about a lot, not just our biological family, but increasingly our family of frequency. And actually, I think it goes beyond that. Because this is actually forming a cardinal grand cross, if you can see this. All these planets, Saturn, Neptune, cardinal, Cancer, cardinal, Libra, cardinal, and Capricorn cardinal. So when you have a cardinal Grand Cross, you have a very important time of initiation and new beginnings. And I think we can certainly all agree on that. So, and this brings with it, as I spoke about at length in the last video, an increased sense of sovereignty as well, that we are no longer just kind of going along with the crowd. There's a much greater sense of, even if it starts with the breath, of knowing that we control our own breath as and when we're conscious of it. That is part of sovereignty, actually. Being aware, and I'll come back to this at the end, of how we can change our state by our breath. That is part of sovereignty. So recognize that we can do this in so many little ways, very quietly, very peacefully in our days, without a word to anyone else. But we're taking back control of our own energy and our own power. And also, because the Sun, the Moon, and Jupiter are opposing Ixion and Quawa here, that brings in some interesting reflections as well, because Ixion can on the one hand be that the difficult, really grisly part of the myth is that Ixion murdered his father-in-law. He had no remorse, no compunction. Zeus gave him a second chance. He then tried to rape Zeus's wife Hera, and at that point he was spun off on a burning wheel into eternity. So one aspect of Ixion's myth is that there could be an aspect of society where people have no moral compass, no remorse at all. And that may well be coming to light, though whatever that's about may well be coming to light, because we have Mercury opposing Pluto. Pluto's in a sign connected to truth, Aquarius, and Uranus, its ruler, is at the anaretic degree. Things are now coming to a head. And so, yes, so this could well be very powerful secrets emerging at this time, which picks up on this part of the myth with Ixion. However, the other side of the myth with Ixion is, and I almost think of people, individuals with a knapsack on their back, sort of humming a tune, that we decide to go beyond the normal social mores, the mainstream, and actually go our own way in life and find joy through simplicity. Joy through simplicity, connecting back to nature, connecting back to the things that we can truly rely on, the beauty. Friendship with others, yes, absolutely, because it's conjunct Quawa, but a much simpler way of life. And I think many of us yearn for that, Neptune, yearn for that. And Quawa, as we know, is very connected to community, that a price has to be paid for the chaos, but then we connect with others in community and we get together in song and dance and joy, and we manifest from that point, not from the chaos, because we have to manifest from a higher frequency. So this really expands this whole idea of family, not just being biological, expand it to community. I think we are really, and particularly by July, this will be beginning, a greater sense of galactic connection, galactic family. And we are absolutely on the tip of that, with Uranus, the planet connected to the galactics, already operationally conjunct to Sedna. It will enter Gemini. Uranus will enter Gemini on the 7th of July. I'll be talking about that in the next video, probably do a separate video on it. And this is about igniting humanity's metamorphosis. I'll put a video for that below, about metamorphosis for humanity, because this really is a game changer. This absolutely is a game changer. And this will really help us to connect to some very far out places, because Sedna, remember, has an 11,400 year orbit her orbit goes way out to the edge of the Oort cloud. This is going to start to connect us to some very distant beings who are part of our galactic family. This is really going to expand our consciousness, I think. And this is just the beginning point, remember. This period in time, the new moon in Cancer, all of this is just the beginning point. And I really would encourage you that a big chunk of this second half of June is obviously the Cancer solstice. And so strongly recommend this. The Cancer solstice happens on the 20th or 21st of June, depending on your geography. I'll put the link for that below. That's quite a detailed video. I'm not going to repeat all that I said in that here now. That would be pointless, but I strongly encourage you to take a look at that, because I went into a lot of detail on all that was in that chart. So we can't miss that bit out. And then we come over to Makemake, as you know, linked to the creator god of the Rapa Nui people, Easter Island, very much a symbol of regeneration for New Earth, but regeneration coming via Libra, harmony and balance. We have to get back to harmony and balance with how we treat our Earth. And I think a lot of the seismic activity is going to be propelling us towards really seeing we've got to love our Earth. Venus in its own sign of Taurus. We've got to love our Earth so much more fully, so much more completely from the heart than we have done in recent times, where there's been a kind of desecration and a pillage. We are coming back to that ancient wisdom, and we really will, and that's already beginning. So I also think, along with what I've said about the eruptive energy, that apart from the earthquakes and volcanoes, I think we will start to see more underwater Sedna volcanoes. Remember, she's in the deep Arctic icy seas. And Haumea as well, who I haven't put on this chart, Haumea at 2 degrees Scorpio water sign. I think we're going to see more underwater volcanoes, and that's going to reveal a lot too. And so we have a great deal happening in this chart. But to keep it simple, I want to, and I'm going to stop sharing here. One final thing. On the 26th of June, we have Mercury sextile Uranus, exactly 29 of Cancer, 29 of Taurus. This is about new ideas and fresh thinking. Then on the 29th of June, we have not only the exact opposition between Mercury and Pluto, secrets coming to light, we also have a powerful yod between the moon conjunct Mars. This is very much about ancient wisdom, Virgo. Very much about ancient wisdom. Square to Uranus. Still operationally square, although it's out of sign. The moon comes to conjunct Mars on the 29th, and it then really emphasizes this yod, which we have here. So the yod is the new moon plus Jupiter, quincunx Pluto, and coming back to Mars here, and the moon will join Mars on the 29th to strengthen that further. So again, this is very beautiful. This is connected to ancient wisdom coming back into our understanding, and the sense of nurturing the earth as well, being very much ignited by our understanding, or our remembrance, important to say, our remembrance of our ancient wisdom. And they are propelling our transformation in these times. Pluto is the planet of transformation. So these times feel incredibly catalytic, evolutionary, a powerful evolutionary impulse we can all feel we're going through. And therefore, the breakdown of the old world is going to accelerate. And it's going to be a mess. And it's going to be loud. And it's going to be crazy. But we know that because we have to see it, not to repeat it again, but to fully break the egg, if you like, for the new Earth chick to emerge. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And I often talk about the breath, and I'm going to put the video for the yogic belly breath below here because everybody can do that. It is incredibly, incredibly simple. But just to say here, to observe that when we are in a negative emotion, a negative state of being, where we see something scary or fearful, and we panic, or we're anxious, and that can be a sort of low-lying anxiety that goes on all through our days. Our breath tends to become shallower and faster. We breathe more up in the chest. So in that state, our state of being, driven by the external, affects our breath very significantly. And that's obvious. We all know that. We've all felt it. However, part of our sovereignty, as I mentioned at the beginning, is we have control of that. We can turn that around. We can turn that around and say, no, I am going to control my breath. I'm going to do conscious breathing. And there are many kinds of conscious breathing. If you've done any yoga, there's so many different pranayamas that you can explore. But the very simple one is the yogic belly breath. And if you just simply close your eyes, drop into your breath, you might want to drop into your heart or drop deep into your belly, and you slow your breath. I describe this in great detail. Slow your breath. Try and pause very slightly at the end of the inhale, but even a little more at the end of the exhale. And just do that for a few minutes. Just do that for a few minutes. And really start to observe how even after 2 or 3 minutes, it actually changes the biomarkers in your blood. And this has been measured with blood samples. How it reduces the cortisol in your blood very quickly, how it boosts your immune system. All kinds of biomarkers change within moments by doing that breath for free at home. Nobody knows. You're not telling anybody. So the breath dramatically shifts your state of being. And you have control over that. In any moment, you have control. So, as I said at the beginning, this is another way we can start to take back our power, another way we can start to take back our sovereignty. And it's so simple. I love these really simple techniques where we can incorporate them into our day and really feel like I'm standing in my power. I'm standing in my sovereignty. So I hope that helps you. A shorter video today because I've already done the Cancer Solstice video separately, but we have a lot happening. July, I felt, was the peak month of the year. When I looked at the year overall with my good friend and colleague, Kathy Rose, and she asked me, which month is your eye drawn to? And I felt it was July. So God bless. I hope this helps you. Don't forget to set your new seed, your new intention. If you don't know where the new moon falls in your chart, just you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to this link below. You can access a 2-part video series that will take you from zero to understand where these points fall in your chart and what it means for you, and you can begin your astrological journey. God bless. Bye for now.